Hey everyone, how are you doing today? Really a pleasure and an honor to have on Marc Sophoulis on the summit. It's just always a pleasure. I mean, Marc was on my first summit, and he's still here. So there's a reason why I bring him back every year because he's just fantastic and knows his stuff. And really excited to have him on today to talk about how to outsmart any opponent. And Marc wrote a really fantastic book called Mastering Tennis Tactics, and I'll put the link in the chat really soon. But he's been kind enough to offer a really nice discount for you all if you pick that up. So super affordable, and I really highly encourage it because I've been reading it, and it's really great stuff. It's going to help you figure out how to combat opponents, also how to figure out like what is your true game style and many other things in there. So yeah, so anyways, Marc, thanks for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. How you been?
It's an absolute pleasure, Merban. Great to be back for another year. It's been 8 years now, maybe, I think, possibly.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a good time, and yeah, I've been great. Just keeping busy with coaching and family, and like yourself, developing plenty of content. So yeah, it's been busy times.
Yeah, definitely. And over at Tennis Menu, I know we've been chatting about like all the great stuff you've been doing, for the site and the brand, and yeah, just really excited to see what else is coming up at Tennis Menu. So, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good fun. Plenty of hard work and blood, sweat, and tears, but it's always good fun when you create things that you enjoy. And yeah, looking forward to sharing more of it in the next few years.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious too, like as a content creator. I mean, I just asked you about this a bit earlier, but writing a book, like especially a very specific and nuanced, I mean, tactical book about how to defeat different playing styles. Like, how much of a process was that? Like you mentioned, decades of experience putting it into a book. How was that?
Yeah, it's quite challenging to put it on paper. I've done this for over 20 years and designing game plans against so many players around the world, and been fortunate enough to coach on the tour for over 20 years, and I coach in Australian football as well, where we're always designing plans, and I thought what I wanted to do was get people to understand basically inside the mind of what professional coaches go through. And it's a lengthy process of data and analytics, and then understanding who you are and understanding who the opponent is. And so I sort of had to sit down and put together this process of how my brain actually works, which is not really easy because I'm quite complex. But it was fun to put it down on paper and sort of see how my formula and structures actually worked. And it's taken a long time, and I think when you put it on paper, it kind of makes more sense to everybody, not just yourself. And then it also helped me clarify the actual order in which I do things. So I actually thought it was actually more of a therapeutic session for me than it was actually anything else. Of having something down on paper was great. So it took a while. It's taken a few months to get this one up and running. And the second part of this book is actually on its way. It'll be done in the next week, which is actually all the drills that you can use to hone your game style. So I've actually got it's basically 20 drills with 5 variations for each one. So there's about 125 different drills for the 5 game styles that you can actually use to develop those styles of play. So yeah, it's a big process, but a fun one at the same time.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow. Can't wait for that. That's a lot of great content. So Marc, I mean, the first chapter in your book, which again, I'll definitely pick up, and I'm going to get that link in a second here, but it really is important, just even in life to self-reflect and like understand yourself. So, I mean, maybe talk to us about like why it's so important to know, your playing style, and like, yeah, I mean, why is that? And what do you have to do like, once you know that?
Yeah, look, I think with the first chapter, I talk a little bit about who am I basically as a player? Who are you as a player? Because if you don't understand yourself, it's very hard to understand others. So, it's in life and in tennis in general. So we dive into sort of each of the playing styles and understand, how genetics also play a role in you identifying who you are. If you're no taller than 5'5", you're not going to be a big server or a big serve and volley player, because the ability to pop the serve is going to be really hard. So genetics play a really big role in identifying who we are, identifying how we play and our style and how we win points. And that's the most important part, is firstly knowing you. And I think a few years ago when we did this summit, we spoke about the 80-20 rule. And I'm really big on the 80-20 rule, which is 80% of your game is based upon yourself, and then 20% is how to strategize against the person I'm playing against, using your strengths to defeat someone else's weaknesses. So, I talk a little bit about knowing you first, knowing them second, and then knowing how to use what I have against them third. And that's kind of the way that I strategize against anyone, because at the end of the day, we always default to what we do naturally. Rafael Nadal is never going to go, okay, I'm playing Roger Federer, I'll become a serve and volleyer because I'm losing from the back of the court. That's not his default. His default is playing off the back, using his big forehand, using his slice serve. So, players will always gravitate to what they do naturally. So understanding what you do naturally is critical, and is the part of the first step of actually being able to plan against someone else. Is, what do I do well? How am I going to use that to beat them? So, the first chapter of this book is all based around, identifying your game style. Who am I? What do I do really well? What can I use as my strengths? And then we delve into what's next, which is the opponents.
Gotcha. So is it better than, rather than to say that, oh, I like the all-court game style, or I like the serve and volley style, I want to become that, it's better to actually assess, like, what are my maybe natural talents, and then just choose the game style according to that?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I think the biggest thing is, if we were able to choose a game style, it probably wouldn't work, because it depends on, your genetics, your strengths, the way that you play. So I think the biggest thing is, okay, well, what's my genetic makeup? What's my height? What's my strengths? What are my swing path, strengths and weaknesses? And then start to look at, we've got a checklist in the book that actually identifies all the areas of the game that you can go through, tick off where you think you sit in terms of your strengths. And then at the end of it, it'll be, okay, the more ticks you have in one column will generally identify the game style you are. And then we also talked a few years ago about the primary and secondary game style. So you look at your primary, which is what you do default, and secondary is, what's the areas of my game that are also pretty strong that I can implement as a secondary part of my style to become a little bit more unpredictable. And when we understand what our primary is, which is what we default to under pressure, and then secondary is, what can I add to my game that's going to be a change up in what I do, that's when we start to understand who we are as a more holistic player. So in this book, I've put together a nice little checklist that, actually, I didn't put together. My wife, who's a graphic designer, put it together. Right. I gave her the info, but I think it's important to know, who we are, tick those boxes, and then be able to then go, okay, well, if my genetics say that I'm like this, if my strengths say that I'm like this, then I need to play within that style. And the more you play within your style, the more comfortable you'll feel. And in particular, under pressure. Under pressure is where we get squeezed a little bit, and we see what comes out of that.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's really cool. Again, like with the book, what I like and what I think is motivating too, like sometimes maybe people might think, oh, like counterpunchers, they don't think much of them or whatever. But then you have these examples, like all these like amazing professional players that are considered counterpunchers because of what their traits are, like maybe they're, a very competitive fighter, and then maybe they're shorter in stature, but they have like, amazing ground strokes, and they prefer to move lateral than moving up. And so that's just their natural game style, but they've really maximized that and become really great players, and largely in part because they also are implementing a lot of the strategies that that you talk about in the book against various different players. So yeah, just really cool. So I guess, yeah, maybe we'll just stop and take a couple of questions if you don't mind, Marc. Cool. So from Gordon, how to stop a serve and volleyer, serve and volley. Gilbert and Winning Ugly had some strategies. What are yours, particularly on grass? That's interesting.
Yeah, playing against serve volleyers is obviously a rare occasion these days. I think it's serve volley has become, and I mentioned in the book that it's become more of a strategy than it is a game style, to be honest. And
Mm,
when you look at the top players, and Max Cressy is probably the only one currently in the game that probably serve volleys. But I think when you play a serve volleyer, because it's so rare, it's so important not to panic. That's the first thing that I talk about with players is, you need to make a serve volleyer play the first volley. The most important thing is, and the most challenging thing is, make them play from their first volley and look to pass on the second volley. On the second passing shot. If you try and go past them on the first one, the space is very limited. So what you want to do is you want to play the first one, try and get at their toes. It's obviously one of those tactics that has been around for a long time. If someone's coming to the net, get it low at their toes, make them volley up, which gives you more time on the second ball to pass or to lob. One of the rules I do have with playing a serve volleyer is do not lob off the first ball. And someone is
solid.
coming into the net, they're coming in, they haven't reached the net yet. You try and go over their head when they're still at the service line, the space is minimal. Tennis is a time and space game. Bring them forward, make them play the first ball, and look to pass on the second ball. Now, data does tell us, and this is a generic data stat, that 67% of the time when someone's coming to the net is their chance of winning the point. 67%. When you're
Yeah.
both at the baseline, it's 46 or 47% on average. Now, it's a 20% difference more when I'm coming to the net of winning the point. But you must make the player play the volley and make it hard for them to win the point. And the data does say that when someone has to play one volley, that drops to under 50%. When someone has to play two volleys, it drops again. So it's important to make sure you're making the opponent play a volley as they're coming in and not allow them cheat points straight off the bat. So, playing serve volleys is tough because it is rare, but at the same time, keep calm, make them play, and then pass on the second ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good stuff. Thanks for those strategies there. Good question. One of the best serve volleyers I played was short. Interesting. Yeah, I guess
Yeah,
it doesn't.
and
Yeah.
that's a good point because I was a serve volleyer. I'm not tall at all. I'm 5'10", and for me, I was quick around the court, and that's probably what saved me. Now, the
Mm,
challenge I did have, and why I probably didn't go to the next level of the game, was I didn't have the height to be able to pop the serve big enough to get easy
mm,
enough first volley. So, everyone can play every style, but it's how well you can execute depending on your genetics generally. But you watch some of the bigger serving guys, they get an easy first volley because of the ability to pop that serve. So I
yeah.
do agree. I think there's, we can all do multiple things on the court. What level that can take us to is always different depending on, our strengths and our genetics help play a massive role.
Yeah, or maybe it's like that strategy is actually more of like a secondary one that like it should be your secondary. But maybe you're
Correct.
using it as a primary and you should switch it up.
Yeah.
um yeah, cool. Gordon Roche, Laver Oswald, Hold Emerson, not too shoddy or tall. Yeah, I mean, also different era, I guess, but where it was a lot more serve volley too.
Yeah.
Marc, I'm an aggressive doubles player. After I hit a few good volley poaches, my opponents lob the crap out of me, we'll say. What can I do to better anticipate their lobs and get in position for an overhead?
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a good question. I had a player I was working with on transition yesterday, and mind you, it's 6 a.m. here in Melbourne, Australia. So it's yesterday is a little while ago, but we had a young boy who was working on the same thing. He kept getting lobbed, and one of the things I noticed with his positioning and his footwork was when you do come to the net, you are transitioning forward, the ability for you to, and I call it treading water. When you tread water and you got your feet sort of going like this underneath the water as quick as you can, as you're coming to the net, we need a couple of little steps to tread water, which means we don't have to continue to charge forward, because by charging forward, it actually disallows you to change direction and go back. So, as the opponent is striking the ball is when you should be split stepping, and that's common rule around movement is split step as the opponent hits, to stop the weight shifting forward too fast so you can't go back. So we need a tread water, split step on impact to be able to hold the position. And that's when, and we call a split step a decision step for a reason. We make a decision where the ball is going. Is it going at us? Is it going over us? And the ability to read the cue of the opponent is an important factor in where are they going. So reading the cues of how big are the swings, are they shaping below the ball, are they hitting through the line of the ball, will actually allow us to read the game a little better. Now, as a volleyer and working within doubles and seeing a couple of the best players in the world working alongside the Bryan brothers for a long time, watching them read the game is incredible. They don't charge unless they know it's the time to charge. They read the game, they read their opponent, and their feet are always constantly cueing to the opponent. And that's a really key point with anything with movement is your feet need to be on and you need to cue to the opponent, not just try and do what you want to do, but read the game before you do it.
Yeah, 100%. Great stuff. Thanks, Marc. Giovanni, is the best way to do that via video or recording yourself? And if so, how do you know the difference between what I feel are my strengths and what are my realistic strengths are? Nice question.
Yeah, great question. Videoing is so powerful. It's the most powerful tool that you can ever use to be able to analyze anything. What we feel and what we actually doing are two totally different things. And I find that in particular as a coach when I'm dealing with a player and a parent, and the player says, I felt this in the match. The parent says, I saw this in a match. And it's literally so far apart. It's actually incredible. So I think videoing is really cool because that's evidence of what we actually do. But I think also having a really professional eye look over you is really critical. So, I had a parent send me video of their player playing in a tournament overseas only recently. And that parent said to me, this is what they're doing. Have a look at the video. And when I looked at the video, I saw a totally different thing. So, perception is a really big part of that. What do we perceive our strengths to be, but what are our actual strengths? So, I think having a professional eye look over that is really critical to help you understand what your strengths are. But also your feel as a player is important. What do I feel good at? Where do I feel the most comfortable? And when you understand where you feel the most comfortable, that's important. And then get someone to look at it and say, hey, I really think you're really good at this. I think the other thing that we don't take into account enough is, we don't look at what side of the court is my favorite side of the court. Do I like to return or serve better first? Where do I get my confidence from? When I wind up on a slow forehand, I'm better than when the ball comes faster on my forehand. When the ball comes fast on my backhand, I love it because I can deflect the ball, but when it comes slow, I hate it. So, I talk about surface area problems or strengths, and then I talk about the deeper stuff. So the surface area stuff is my forehand is my strength. The depth part of that is my forehand from the ad side when the ball is slow is my strength. So, it's very dependent on, grips and swing paths and different things like that are critical to also understand. So that's why I always recommend having a professional give you some ideas rather than sort of going by your feel. Get someone to overlook you or someone that sees you or plays you regularly to help you understand your strengths.
Yeah. Very, very sage advice there. Gordon, not that rare in England at veterans level, the norm on grass. I'm trying to remember, was that, maybe it's the serve and volley comment,
Maybe.
was it?
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. And, obviously the grass is obviously in England is quite predominant. In a lot of other countries, probably not so much, which is a shame. Like we still have a lot in Australia, the grass courts here, and mostly in our country towns. And we have a lot of country tournaments that we have here, which is, 2 hours from the city, 3 hours from the city. But they're quite rare here, and I know they're quite rare in a lot of places around the world. But generally, I mean, if you're on grass, and I loved playing on grass, which was amazing because I didn't get injured as much, which was nice. But it was actually suited my game. But obviously where serve and volley is predominant, again, the same rules will apply no matter who you play. In the book, I go through how to play as a serve and volley firstly, and then how to break down a certain volley. So if you want to get to your opponent's heads, there's a few little tips there to be able to do that.
Yeah, great stuff. And yeah, I guess talking about the counterpuncher, it's a very frequent scenario that we encounter, especially in the NTRP, like maybe the lower to mid level. So I guess maybe and I think there's obviously a much more deeper explanation in the book, but what are maybe like one or two either I guess strategies or tactics or things you want to think about when you're playing a counterpuncher on how you can maybe dissect and then defeat them?
Yeah, it's interesting playing counterpunchers because what you want to look at is what they do really well. So counterpunchers are incredible at deflecting speed. They're incredible at staying in the rally. They love the longer points. They want to keep you in the game as much as possible. They love to utilize what you give them. So, when you think about what they want, then you go on the flip side, what don't they want? They don't want, the slower ball because then they have to generate their own speed. They don't like to play, if I think of really good counterpunchers, and every game style is up for debate. So, if I say that so-and-so is this, you might have a different opinion. I totally understand that. But, predominantly from a primary perspective, someone like Novak Djokovic came on the tour as a counterpuncher. Rafa Nadal, same thing, counterpuncher / aggressive baseliner. They like the game to be played in a lateral sense, which means that they want the game to be played side to side. When you play those guys and you think of when Soderling played Nadal and broke down Nadal, when Del Potro played Rafa, and when you play Novak Djokovic, the tactic is to strategize straight through the middle of the court. And what I mean by that is you play hard, fast through the middle, and you take away the ability for the game to be played lateral.
Yeah.
And what happens then is, and everyone says, but if you play down the middle, how are you supposed to get past them? Well, you start down the middle, you play hard, fast through the middle, which disallows angle to be created from the middle of the court. So that's the first thing you do. And once you get time and space on your ball, that's when you spread the opponent, you put them into defense. You don't want to put the game into a lateral game when the game is in neutral. So when everybody's just rallying, you don't want to be rallying lateral with a counterpuncher. You want to go through the middle, you take away their lateral game. And then once you get the time and space ball, that's when you spread them when you're in an offensive situation. And in the book, I go through that is what they want is lateral, take away that. Generally, counterpunchers also don't have the biggest serve. So when you think of counterpunchers, they have a solid serve. They like to keep the first serve in play and not give you a look at their second serve. So anytime you get a look at a second serve, that's your chance to get into the offensive situation and start putting them into defense. The other thing is, depending on who it is, you may want to bring them forward to the baseline. If they love to stay on the baseline, bring them forward, take them away from their comfort zone. So when you think about playing counterpunchers, what they like doing, take them away from that, and try and exploit their areas of vulnerabilities of short balls, middle balls, slower balls, and make them generate, and also look to attack their second serve a little bit when you have the opportunity.
Yeah, that's interesting stuff and excellent. If you're an aggressive baseliner and you're kind of used to hitting really hard and fast balls, you have to kind of maybe just scale back a bit and tell yourself like, okay, maybe I'll hit like would you say like loopier, slower balls or some other sort of slow balls, slice?
Yeah, I think the big one to play is the high heavy ball as an aggressive baseliner. So generally you won't play slow if you're an aggressive baseliner. You've got the impatient, I want to be aggressive and have a go at the ball. So, thinking about maybe the heavier ball that shifts them back off the court first and then allows you to come forward. Or you can utilize, if you're a Arina Sabalenka or if you're a Alina Rybakina and you just hit through the middle of the court hard. And then once you get the ball shorter and with more time, that's when you spread. So you've got different options and different ways of doing it. You look at Rafael Nadal, who plays the heavier ball and shifts the opponent back. Then he looks to take the court space. So everyone will individually do this differently. You just think of what the opponent doesn't like and be able to expose that in the way that you want to expose it. I've got some players and some, younger players that might go loop your ball, shift them back, and then the player can't play above their shoulders and generate speed. Or you get the one that's the aggressive baseliner that goes straight through, takes away the time and space and the angle, and then spreads the court from there. So, always look at what you do really well. Hence the reason I always speak about what do I do really well, and utilize that against the opponent to exploit them.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Marc. Warren asks, just played a lefty, a slice serve into the ad court. My normal return goes to his strength, his forehand. What to do?
That's actually a really good question, Warren, and I like that one. So the first thing when playing a lefty, and the biggest advice I always give is take away their strength and what they use to exploit you first. So, and that is their slice serve. So a lefty loves to slice the ball, especially on the ad side, and get you off into the doubles court. I always advise to put your left foot outside of the singles line and make sure you take away that serve first and foremost. So you literally got one foot inside the doubles line, and you're taking away the angle of their serve. That's the first thing that I like doing. The second thing is I actually don't mind that return, Warren, going to the forehand first. Generally, if you want to break down a player, you actually need to go to their strength before they've got time to set up. So if you can actually hit that ball relatively hard through to the forehand and go to that side first, that can open up the backhand side a little bit easier for you. So that's generally the first concept I do is go to the strength to open up the weaker side to exploit that, or go down the middle of the court. So if you can try and get your return through the middle of the court, what that then does, and like I said with the counterpuncher, it makes the game more linear. It keeps the game up and down. So their forehand can't create angle on you again. It actually has to come back through the middle. So, instead of trying to go cross court or trying to get to their weaker side first, maybe narrow the game, play through the middle, take their time away, take their space away, and then you're back into an even point after that. So they're the two different strategies I'd use.
Yeah, lovely. Love it. Tom, I'm working through my third copy of the Tennis Mini Training Journal. It is incredible to plan and review both practice and matches. Love it.
Thanks, Tom. That's really cool to hear. Thank you so much for doing that. It's that's another bit of work that I put together a little while ago with my wife, who's the designer, and I just give her the information. But I'm so glad that it works for you, and I hope it's working for your players as well, and anyone around you as well. Hopefully, it's a good resource to have. So I do tend to take a little bit of time putting these things together, and I love when people are using them. So thanks so much, Tom. Much appreciated.
Yeah, awesome. Love to see it. And the book journal has good basic info, then outlines for about 100 days of playing. Oh, sweet. Love it. Good stuff, Tom. Thanks. Marc, that is good advice. I think I'm so focused on volleying, I'm not properly reading my opponent's cues. Thanks.
No, that's good. Yeah, and then the biggest part about any part of our game is we play such an open, adaptable, random game that a lot of us think about what we have to do. But if we can ingrain, and I'll give you a little bit of a concept here, Marc, as well. So our brain is wired such that 95% of our thoughts on match day are subconscious, 5% are conscious. So if we can ingrain how to volley, how to move, all that sort of stuff on game day, allow your brain to be free of what I have to do, to be able to use that 5% to read what's actually happening. Allow the brain to be free enough to read the opponent, to read the cues, because if you allow the brain to do that, your feet and body will just take over after that. We don't have to think about what we're doing. We have to just think about what's coming in. Allow the receptors to read the far side of the court. So, I always say ingrain the habits in training and just let the habits happen on match day and start to allow your brain to read what's happening at the other end of the court.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's see, Gordon, how far can one psych out an opponent without crossing the line into bad behavior? What strategy do you recommend on this? Dark arts.
I'm big on this, to be honest. I really enjoy this part of it. So I have a background in Australia, very physical, very, I guess, it's a battle. So I love getting in my opponent's head no matter what sport I play. And actually not even sport. I could play Monopoly or I could play chess, and I'm starting to get into my opponent's head. So that's the competitive nature of me. But I think, I've used little strategies in particular on the female tour, where I'll get the girls to step inside the baseline, the second serve, jump around a little bit, make themselves look seen and look really big. I see doubles players and a lot of the best doubles players make themselves look really big on the court and jump around, and even little snickering comments. I've seen and heard a lot of that. There is a line. What that line is very grey. So I think I'm always about respecting the opponents and not getting sort of to the point where you say things that disrespect them, and make it personal. I think it's more about being, you can do things that are professional, that are competitive. Finding the line is the hardest part, but, do what it takes to win. I reckon Gordon's a really good way to look at it, and whatever you can do to get under your opponent's skin is always a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I watch quite a bit of English Premier League, and there's a lot of banter and talking trash and stuff. So just kind of interesting. Good question. Giovanni, I think my nerves are just so high during play that I'm concentrating on how to control my side of the court to keep a Zenish mindset that I don't even realize what my strengths are or can be.
Yeah, the mental side. I put a post up on our socials the other day, and it's around about your routines and your thinking. So one of the biggest things about the mental side of the game that I didn't understand as a player, and I'm sure that a lot of players don't understand, is that it's a trained habit. So creating a routine in training, and this is where the 95% ingraining it into your subconscious comes in. If you ingrain your habits, your routines, your behaviors, your breathing patterns, your Zen mindset in training, and trying to simulate that as much as possible, come game day, you allow that to just be the subconscious part of your brain, and allowing the 5% to realize what your strengths are, what's actually working on the day, what patterns you're using that are going really well, what patterns you're using that aren't going so well. So I think, I really encourage you to practice your mindset on a practice court, and allow the match court to just be, what occurs naturally to you, and allow the conscious brain to think about what's happening at the other end and what I can do to beat them. So, it's a trained habit. It's not easy, definitely. I'm not going to say that you walk on the court and everything becomes easy. This stuff is pretty challenging, and I think, what separates the good from the great is what's between the ears. So, good luck to Giovanni with that one.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's see, Warren, thanks. No problem. Raymond, all right. What's your advice on playing pushers or counterpunches? I know we talked about this a bit, but maybe if there's any other thoughts you have on that, or
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the other one that I probably didn't mention before is, a lot of the pushers, in Australia we call them hacks, and we call them pushers everywhere and whatever else. But a lot of the time, what you want to do is not allow them to get, or suck you into their game. So if you get sucked into playing their game, you're in a bit of trouble. So, a lot of the time, if we're talking pushers, we're talking those ones that are giving that slow, floaty ball that, doesn't give you the opportunity to generate your own speed. And, if you're going to play a pusher, there's a couple of things that I suggest before the match. Practice your volleys, practice your drive volleys, practice your smashes. Because if you're not willing to come forward to the net and take away time and space, then I think it's going to be really hard to beat them, because you're going to have to beat them at their game. So if you can think your way through it and think, okay, I may go one up, high, heavy ball, shift them back, and I know that they're going to hit the ball with, using my speed and just puddle it up in the air, come forward, drive volley, take away the time and space from them. They won't be able to play their game as often as they would like. So, take away what they do really well, take away their strengths. And I think if you do that, then you're in a really good position to win the match.
Love that. Thanks, Marc. Gordon, how to beat better players than yourself? And then also how not to lose to a lower skilled players?
Yeah, I love that question. I've got a theory around. There's three scenarios we play in. There's the win-win scenario, where we play against someone higher than us, that it doesn't matter if we lose, we're expected to lose anyway, so we just go out and we swing. There's the lose-lose scenario, where we're playing a player that is well below us, that we're expected to win, So if we win, it's normal. If we lose, it's like, how did you lose to that player? And then you've got your win-lose scenario, which is the one where it's basically you're an even keel to the opponent. So you've got your three different scenarios. Playing up is generally easier to play your best tennis because you've got no fear of losing. Playing down is always your hardest part, where you've got all the fear and all the pressures on you. And then you've got your middle one where it's a bit of pressure, but it's also, they're at my level, so it's kind of like a 50-50 ball game. Yeah. The one thing that if someone is better than you, you need strategy, right? So, you can't go battling, your strengths against theirs. You're in trouble, right? If they're stronger player than you and they're better than you, and if we go by UTR and they've got a better UTR than you by 1 or 2, their best tennis is better than your best tennis. So we can't beat them like that. And this is why I wrote the book, is because I think anyone can beat anyone on any day. If I said to you, Melbourne, okay, you're playing Novak Djokovic tomorrow, what's the percentage chance of you winning that match? What would you tell me?
0.
Okay. So that's a really honest answer. I'm glad you're honest with me. So if you say 0, my actually comeback as a coach is, well, it's not. It's 50-50, because when you walk onto a tennis court, it's a 50-50 battle. What you're playing against is you're playing against the ranking or the rating or the name. I'm playing against the skill sets. So when I think about, designing a game plan, I don't design against the name. I don't design against the ranking. I don't design against the UTR. I don't design against whatever rating you are. I design against, this is what you do well. This is what I do well. Here's how I'm going to exploit you. So that's how I generally look at everything. Take away who you're playing against, look at their style and go, my style is going to beat you by doing this. So this is what I'm going to do. That's in a nutshell. And that second part is it's a mindset, right? So you've got to get yourself into a mindset of everything for me is 50-50. Everything is win-lose. It's not win-win. It's not lose-lose. It's win-lose. It's competitive. And here's my plan to go through that. If you don't have a plan, and this is my biggest concern with players, if you do not have a plan, if you do not have a destination that you're trying to sail your ship to, where do you adjust your rudders to go towards, right? And this is my biggest challenge. This is why we get fearful in matches, is because we don't adjust our rudders, because we don't have a really clearly defined process and outcome that we're trying to achieve with what we're trying to do. So, get your game plan sorted. That gives you a really good clarity around what you need to do. And you stop playing against the person. You stop playing against the identity that they are. You start playing against the game style, and then you can utilize what you can do to beat them.
Yeah, definitely. Really amazing approach to doing it. Let's see. SL, my strategy is great at the beginning of the match, and then it degenerates to just getting the ball back. Any suggestions for maintaining strategy?
Yeah. I in the book, I've put this little cheat sheet together, which is, what you can just take on the court to realign your goals. Because I think, everyone starts with a strategy. And I think that's a really great point, is we all start with a strategy, and then we start losing, or we start missing balls, or we start getting tight or nervous. And then we just revert to our default style of play. So it's important to have, your cheat sheets in your bag, things that I've got a racket here, and got my little Yonex racket, which my sponsors will get those in. But, I get kids to put, little reminders on their racket and stick it on their racket of, what their focus is for the match. Having a clearly defined focus is really important to realign you at the change of ends. Your routines during points to reset. So one thing I always like to do is set my goals and in the book you'll see it, but it's kind of like, when I'm serving, here's my plan. When I'm returning, here's my plan. When the ball gets past those first 4 balls, here's my plan. So I have 3 little clearly defined plans. Once the point finishes, and I always encourage players to have a towel at the back of the court, you wipe away the last point. Win or lose, you wipe it away, and you reset to the plan that you had again. So you play the point, you wipe it away, you reset to the plan that you had again, and just continue that over and over again. And that's staying present in the moment. And I always teach players to be as present as possible. But the more you can do that, the more you stay ingrained in that present thinking, and the more you stay ingrained in that process thinking, which I think is really critical to not allow it to degenerate as the point or the match goes on.
Lovely, great stuff. It's a good one. Mental as well. How to combat the fear of losing.
And I just go back to the purpose of why you're doing this. Always think about everything is going to be a battle and someone's going to lose. So I try to rewire the thinking of my athletes to say that someone's going to lose the match. So and generally every week that you play, and I know we might be playing local competition, we might be playing a local pennant or a tournaments, or you might play whatever. You are going to lose basically every week of your life as a tennis player. And unfortunately, that's the reality of the way we go about tennis. Is there's a winner and there's a loser. We don't play soccer where there's a draw. In Australian football we can have a draw, but in tennis there's a winner and there's a loser. So every week we're going to lose. One of the things I always say to players is take away expectation. The moment we put an expectation on something, we get let down. So if I'm I go back to the lose-lose scenario. If I expect to beat that player because they're a lower ranked player than I am, I'm setting myself up for failure straight away. Because the moment I start missing balls is the moment I start going, oh my God, I'm going to lose to this player. What am I doing? I can't lose to them. What's everyone going to start thinking? And our brain starts going in a different direction to where it should be. So I think that fear of losing is such a common thing that we all go through. Every player goes through. Every coach goes through. So I think if you can continually stay present as no expectation, wipe away the point, play the point on its merits, play the player in front of you, not their name, not their ranking, just play who you're playing against, their game style, put a strategy together, stay present. I think it's a hard thing to do. I'm just sort of, I'm blabbing it pretty easily here, but, under pressure, just maintain the fact that I'm playing against this style of player. This is my style. This is my strength. Stick to my strengths, play to their weaknesses. That's kind of, in a nutshell, as easy as it can be. But it is quite challenging on a court. I do understand that too.
Yeah, that's right. Game plan, execution. Excellent. Gordon, what strategy do you recommend for grass court play?
Well, if you're asking me, I'd be getting to the net as soon as possible and not letting the rallies go. And but I think, look, it just depends on who you are and what you're really good at. If you're really good at back of the court play, there's no point you always coming in, but you'll come in to finish points off. If you're really good at the front of the court and you're really good, serve and volleyer, or a really good player at the net, then don't stay back. I think staying to what works for you and who you are and what you do really well is important. And if that's not working, obviously try and change it up a little bit, and by coming to the net, or by trying to serve a little bit bigger and put a little bit more pressure on. I think that's critical. But I think the other one to look at is, what does grass do for us? When we play on grass events here in Australia, I always tell players, if you put the ball onto the grass will do the work for you. So if you're not hitting the grass, there's a problem. You're hitting the ball outside the lines, you can't win points, right? So let the grass do the work. It obviously dies, so the less ball speed that you can put on and spin, it's probably going to die, and it's going to drop. So, using drop shots, using slice serves, coming forward to the net and playing shorter volleys, not trying to hit deeper volleys all the time. Obviously just thinking about what the grass is going to help you with is important as well when you're on grass. But, if you don't stick to your game style and your strengths, I don't think any strategy is going to work as well as it could.
Yeah, most definitely. So, Marc, kind of selfish question, but I would consider myself kind of more of a counterpuncher, but also aggressive baseliner. It kind of depends, really. I feel like if I'm playing like 5-5 plus players, I'm more of a counterpuncher. If it's like below that, then it's a little bit more of aggressive baseliner. But let's say, counterpuncher playing against an aggressive baseliner. And one thing I love about your book, if I didn't already mention, is that it has like a cheat sheet as well. So it's like, if this is your style, this is what you have to do against these styles. I love that. But what's a couple strategies that the counterpuncher can employ against an aggressive baseliner who sometimes we feel like they're blasting us off the court?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think when you think of what does an aggressive baseline do really well is that they play aggressive, right? So our job is to take them away from that aggression. So how do we take them away from that aggression? There's a couple of different ways to do it. We don't want them to be able to set their feet up and be able to play a ball with their feet set up. So, your first ball off a return when they're serving, they're generally big servers because they're, obviously aggressive players. You want to try and neutralize. So you always either try and go through the middle on the first serve or you play the patterns and get the ball moving pretty quickly. The moment the ball is in play, keep the aggressive baseliner moving. Do not allow them to set their feet. Do not allow them time and space. Speed of ball will hurt them. Width of ball will hurt them. Also, shifting them back with a higher ball will hurt them. Because if you can keep them off balance, it's very hard for them to penetrate the court. The moment you give time and space to an aggressive baseliner, that's when you know you're in trouble, right? And as a counterpuncher, you don't want to be, in defense, but in defense where you can't deflect, where you have to try and slice or you have to try and, just defend that way. You're going to have to be, keeping the ball where you have time to rip it and you have time to not allow them time. So, aggressive baseliners want to dominate with serve, dominate with a weapon of a forehand generally, and they want to make sure they are in offense all the time. Your job is to put them in defense. Your job is to move them. Your job is to shift them back. Your job is to not allow them time and space to set up. So, and every time you get a look at their second serve is your opportunity to not allow them to do that. So second serve is your chance to jump on them, and every other time keep them moving.
Yeah, roger that. Thanks, Marc. Let's see. All right, my buddy Byron here. Opponent gets really hot. How can you bring them back down quickest way possible?
Really
like hot.
Okay, so we're talking momentum. They're on fire.
Yeah.
Call the fire brigade first and foremost, and let's try and extinguish that. That's no, I think, yeah, there you go. I think when we're talking momentum and momentum shifts in matches, they're really hard to stop at times. But if you can slow the game down, if you can get them overthinking, if you can slow the momentum or the speed down, or you can win a point and sort of try to stop the flow of points. So, I've got this rule of three. I don't like my opponent winning 3 points in a row. I don't like my opponent to win 3 games in a row. If I lose the set and I've got no momentum, I've lost the last 7 or 8 points in a row, or I've lost the last 2 games in a row, that's your time to go to the toilet, go to the bathroom, spend a little bit of time in there, cool yourself down, stop the momentum, stop the flow. So, it's a really hard way to when someone has a really hot hand and they're on, you've got to try and change that somehow. Now, strategy for me is important because if they're rolling, you need to understand what strategy they're not liking, and you've got to continue to exploit them. The second part is if they've got momentum, slow the game down. On the flip side, if you have the momentum, let's keep the game rolling. Let's keep it going as much as possible. Keep it going in the flow that it's in now. Keep the momentum going, because if you can do that, then you'll keep on top of them. But I think, it obviously depends on the player you're playing against as well, and making sure that you're always able to continually find what to exploit on them. And using the cheat sheet that we've got set up for everyone is important to go, okay, let's just go back to the process. It's okay. They won a few points in a row, a few games in a row, but I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to stick to my process.
Yeah, excellent stuff. So, Gordon, strategies to keep watching the ball seams through the match. Well, I know there's the traditional like bounce hit drill and some other drills calling out, but that's more practice. But yeah, any thoughts on this, Marc, about watching the ball?
Yeah, and look, you're right. It all stems down to the practice that you do as well. It just trains in the subconscious brain. If you're having to think about watching the ball come match day, probably haven't ingrained those thoughts into the subconscious mind. But if you are a match day feeling like, oh, geez, what's happening? I've got one little strategy is I try and get the opponents, and you can see a tennis ball behind me. I try and get the opponents to read the actual label of the ball. So through everything that the opponent is doing, read the ball, whether it's a Wilson ball or Dunlop or Yonex or whatever it is, read the label. Try and read the label on every shot they're playing, and that keeps your eyes on the ball. But, I think the other thing on the flip side of that, and I love watching the ball, but on the flip side of that, if we're watching the ball, we're probably about half a second behind where we should be. it's important to be watching what the opponent is doing to be able to then understand what the ball is going to do before the ball does it. So that to me is more of a, cue the opponent rather than cue the ball. And that will speed up your perception skills. That will speed up your anticipation if you're able to cue the opponent as opposed to the ball.
Love it. Love it. Let's see here. Mike G, I'm good at figuring out what I should have done after the match, but not so much during the match. Any suggestions for how to strategize during the match?
Yeah, no, I used to be great at that too, Mike. It was, I'd lose the match and get really angry and then decide, no, I should have done this. But, and this is why, I went down the path of writing this book, Merban, was, I feel like, strategy is one of the most untapped coaching things that people are doing. It's one of the most untapped areas of playing that we strategize too late. But learning how to strategize and knowing who you are and what you're good at and what you're not so good at, what to avoid, what to make sure that you utilize more often, how to exploit different people, it actually helps us during that match to be able to know what to do and when to do it. So I've got players now, I've been doing all this strategy stuff for the last 3 or 4 years, and they're 14, 15, 16-year-olds that can tell me during a match what they should be doing, when they should be doing it, how to expose their opponent. They come off a match and they're telling me the moments that they changed their plan, that they changed their primary to their secondary game style, which is awesome. So I try and ingrain this in all of my athletes, everyone that I coach, no matter who it is, whether it's a junior, an adult, a pro player. My theory of coaching is I want to make myself redundant. So if I can have my athletes knowing exactly how to play, when to play it like that, how to expose different people, and I don't have to say a word, I've done my job. If I'm having to coach them through that post-match, I'm like, I haven't done my job well enough and I need to get better at my job. So, I think it's ingraining these habits, of strategy during practice sets, during, practice sessions, so that come match day, it's just instinct. If we're having to think conscious part of the brain of all of our strategy stuff too much, then it's not really ingrained in our subconscious. So I think, I hope that answers your question, Mike, but I really like the ingraining part of things as a coach, and making sure that you have a process to follow, and then put your cheat sheets in your bag and have them there handy so you can always refer back to them at any stage of your match.
Love it. Thanks, Mark. Ronnie, what's your advice on playing deep? I was trying to figure that maybe deep in the court, do you think?
If it's deep in the court, yeah. I mean, deep in the court, look, I think, height always equals depth. So giving the ball a little bit more shape over the net gives it more depth on the court. There's pretty much 2 ways that you create depth, is the height and the speed, right? So if you give it some height, the ball will travel longer. If you give it some speed, the ball can travel through the court and through the air faster and longer. So I think they're the 2 areas that I always look at. And depth is always the backbone of winning points. If you're hitting the ball short, you're in big trouble. So I think if we're referring to the depth of ball, I'm really big on keeping it deep, in particular to players like aggressive baseliners, where you don't allow them time and space to be able to dictate to you.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Mark. Raymond, I get mixed advice about high toss versus low toss. At 5'9", it's more technical, I guess. At 5'9", my first serve hits the tape a lot. Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah. I think when it comes to serve, obviously everyone has different stroke production, and without seeing the serve in face to face or on video, I can't really give you exact details. But when you're looking at a 5'9" kind of a player, you need to have more shape on your serve. So trying to serve flat, coming from a margin that is not quite high enough over the net to hit flat every serve. So I'll be looking at more shaping serves, hitting targets. So 5'9", I'm guessing we're looking at counterpuncher, maybe secondary aggressive baseline or all-court player, roughly around that. So if you're looking at that, accuracy is your number 1 priority. Speed doesn't matter. Accuracy becomes critical in that sort of a height, making sure that you have enough shape on the ball to firstly clear the net, but secondly, make your opponent play a lot of first serve returns. The more you're giving the opponent a look at your second serve return at 5'9", the more they're going to take control of you. So, increase your first serve percentage by giving more shape and margin, and obviously use your spins rather than your speeds to be able to hit those spots.
Yeah, awesome stuff, Mark. So I don't see any other questions at the moment, but it's also want to ask you. I mean, generally speaking, like what's maybe really the overarching principle? Like I'm trying to think of maybe like one, yeah, I guess one fundamental that you can just tell us to always like keep with us, like when we're trying to figure out strategy or formulate strategy. Like what's one concept that we should always be thinking about?
The number one thing for me then is know what you're good at and do it under pressure. Just
Uh-huh.
if you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like you don't know what to do, go back to what you do really well. You know, if
Right.
you can't read them, you can't understand what their game style is, what they're trying to do, don't rack your brain trying to think too much about them. That's the 20%. Focus on what I can control. I can control my serve. I can control playing my weapon on my forehand as much as I can. I can control me serve and volleying. I can control me trying to utilize what I have. And if I can do that, that will hopefully keep me a little bit calmer in those pressure situations. Because sometimes what we do think is, oh no, I'm losing. What are they doing? I can't even read what they're doing. I can't see it. I can't feel it. And then you get caught up in not knowing what you're doing well and not knowing what they're doing, and you get caught up in the middle of nowhere. So it's like just
Yeah.
stick to what I do really well. If I'm a really fast mover, keep the game lateral. If I'm a really big server, use my serve. If my forehand is my weapon, just use it on every part of the court I can. If I love coming to the net, don't stop doing it. Keep doing it. So just default to what I do really well. And if you can stick to that under stressful situations, generally you'll come out of it pretty decent. I'm not going to say you win every match when you do that, but at least you come out with a lot more clarity.
Yeah, I just love that because, as soon as you asked that question, it made me think about like what are my strengths, what do I do best, and then I thought about it. I immediately got confident because I thought, you know what, like this is my favorite, these are my favorite shots. Like I love hitting them. If I can just get, do more of this on the big points, especially, I'm gonna have a good chance, So it just inspired confidence in me. Like when you when you asked me that and I thought about it. So I like that way of thinking. Uh, Marc, I just want to, call attention obviously to all the great stuff you're doing. And we talked about some of it earlier, but I mean, are there any particular, websites or profiles or anything like that that you might want the audience to check out?
Oh, look, if you love your tennis and you want to continue to get better at what you do as both a player and a person, jump on the tennis menu, thetennismenu.com. So we've gone to a membership base where every week I do a mentoring session, pretty much like this, where you can ask me questions and we talk, and every week of your membership, and we discuss everything in the game. Really important that if we can continually share things, and I love sharing everything that I know. I'm tennis has given me so much, so I want to continue to give back to the game itself. Continue to, if you want to come to that, you can do that. We've got resources, courses online. Obviously the book that you've obviously going to share, the Mastering Tennis Tactics, jump on, and it's 70 pages worth of blood, sweat, and tears. I know late nights and early mornings getting up before work and doing that, and before my kids get up and annoy me. But it's a lot of work to put these things together. But it's all about wanting to make the game better and wanting to make everyone around me better. And so the tennismenu.com. It's got heaps of resources. We just joined actually with Nathan Martin from Martin Fitness. So Nathan's obviously going to be part of your summit, Melbourne, and Nathan's a good friend of mine. We go way back, and Nathan's got some great stuff on there, and we share a lot of his stuff as well. So I'd love to meet you guys. I know the questions were amazing, and a lot of really good tennis lovers in this room today. But anyone that wants to jump on and chat every week with me, I know I can talk a lot, but I love chatting tennis and I love sharing, and hopefully I get to meet you all soon. So and there's a discount that we've given for the ebook as well at the shop. So you just shared it now, I think, Merva.
Yeah, exactly. So again, definitely check out Marc's book, Mastering Tennis Tactics, that he wrote with his wife, and great graphics design by the way. So let her know. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, 30% off with code TM Summit 30 during the summit. So yeah, just check out that link, which I'll yeah, I put in the chat. So yeah, Marc, any last yeah, I guess parting pieces of advice or just any last comments you want to make, before we adjourn and let you on go on with your morning?
No, look, I'm just grateful to be on again, Melbourne, after 8 years of doing this. It's always great to jump on, and your audience is always so keen to learn, and I'm always keen to teach and to learn from everybody else as well. So for me, it's been awesome. It helps me realign my goals when I always talk on these summits. Is okay, what do I want to make sure that people walk away with today? And I hope you've walked away with some ideas around yourself and how you can get better, and how you can put your strengths into play to expose somebody else's weaknesses. So, I love doing it, love being part of it. You do a great job of bringing the tennis community together. So it's always a pleasure to be on, and I'm looking forward to some feedback, because I love getting feedback around what I do. So if you've got any feedback for me, please feel free to reach out at the Tennis Menu. Just DM me on social media. I love chatting, and I always get back to everybody that does message. So hope to meet you all one day soon. So thanks so much for having me on again.
Awesome. Well, again, Marc, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure and an honor to be chatting with you and learning from you. And yeah, just such a great strategic mind, among many other things. So yeah, everybody check out the tennismenu.com and also /shop at the end there, and check out the ebook as well. Or sorry, the book. But thanks a lot, Marc, and hope to connect again soon. Hopefully, yeah. Let's not wait for the whole year. We'll chat before then. And yeah, all the best to you, and connect again soon. And thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.